Okay, Zakti the Gemara. Gufa. So we were just talking about the Gemara doesn't discuss Gufa. It says V'kanas Ishtay Rishus de Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Kiva Amar Chayva Lo Yitama Rishus de Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Kiva Amar Chayva. Lo Yitama that a kohen should be mitama to his sister. Give him towards the bottom. That a kohen could be mitama to his sister. Right? A kohen is not being mitama to anybody, but to his kohen he is. And it says befrat a sister because a sister depends. If she's married, I think even to Yisrael, he's not allowed to. Even to a kohen, she's not allowed to. But of course, I think it has to be. She has to be a basula. She has to be living at home still, and she has to be a basula. So the question is does he have to be mitama or is he allowed to be mitama? The oilam tavaydu that an evet kanani should stay by you forever, and you should free him. Is that a rishus de Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Kiva Amar Chayva Amar Leva Papa Labaya but Amar Leva Mishaysh Rava my Lema Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Kiva B'chol Torah Kula Hachi Pligi. Let's say that this machlekes applies all over the Torah. The Mar Amar Rishus, the Mar Amar Chayv. Now the Rishonim even discussed if Rabbi Shmuel is talking about even Loisa says, but we're not touching that. And right now the Gemara in the Havamina for a second thinks that maybe Rabbi Shmuel holds that there's no such thing as a mitzvah say deraisa. Whatever that. Why we would think that? Well, we just see a pattern. He says 3 times. It says in the pasuk, and he seems to feel that the pasuk is saying Rishusim and not commandments. Okay, I'm gonna let you know. Over here they have 3 specific machlekes and they had to deal with the pasuk. It says in the pasuk. V'kanes ishtay. Rishus divi Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva Amar Chayva. My time with Rabbi Shmuel. Savalaki haitana detanya Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Amar. Papish Amatayra loisishna esachich b'levecha yachol kagoin zu. I would think that this is a violation of loisishna esachich b'levecha. Tamalayim of Avar Lavruach Kina v'Kina es ishtay, and he's mekana his wife. So we see you're allowed to. It's not a violation of the pasuk of if someone feels that their wife is acting inappropriately with another man, he's allowed to warn her. Okay, fine. It says kina twice. What is the pasuk? Once, right? Kina. It's 2, but we can't do that as 1. It says the whole thing of kina. It says it twice. It says twice the kina. The first kina is that he had a ruach kina, but it doesn't say that he did it. So it says twice the kina. Once in the ratio of the pasuk where it's talking about that she was matama, and then it says and then she wasn't matama. In other words, the pasuk is referring to 2 scenarios. In other words, the guy has a juk in his head that his wife's being inappropriate without knowing what happened. That's the point of the pasuk. But the pasuk reiterates the idea of he had a ruach kina and he was makana. So the fact that the Torah says it a second time, Rabbi Kiva learns to be a chayiv. Rabbi Shmuel, what does Rabbi Shmuel do with the second set of the Kines Ishtay? I did the by the Michtav, Behinitma, Behilainitma, because the pasuk is talking about 2 different scenarios. One that she was Matama, one that she wasn't Matama, again, neither with the knowledge of the husband. But still, since the pasuk is saying 2 different scenarios, so it reiterates this idea of the Kines Ishtay, like this ruling of Rabbi Shmuel. This is the way Rabbi Shmuel dashed in his Torah B'chlal. The Tanya Rabbi Shmuel, call Pasha Shanemra. The nishnes, any pasha that it says, and then is repeated, it only comes to repeat it for the new case. In other words, it's not extra just because I can learn it out from the original point. In other words, according to Rabbi Shmuel isn't asking that you could write the pasuk without the second set of kinna. That's not the argument over here. But he's saying because there's a new set of circumstances that created the new that invited or that allowed the Torah to write it again, we don't dash in it. The Torah is saying a new scenario of that she was a matama or she was matama. So we say kinna again, but it's not for you to dash in chayva now. Both of them are meant for rishus. That's how Rabbi Shmuel dashes. Okay, so he's masking that it's technically extra, but because there's a new scenario in the pasuk, it's not extra to learn, to dash in with. Lo yitama. To her, he should be matama. Just talking about again the kohen's basula sister. Rishus the Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Kiva Amar Chayva. My time, Rabbi Shmuel. Why does Rabbi Shmuel hold that it's only rishus and it's not a mitzvah? Matama ID the ksiv. Because it already said because it says a blanket rule, all sons of Aaron, which means all kahanim forever should not be mitama to another person. it's tzricha lemechtav lo yitama. It's tzricha lemechtav lo yitama. Now I have to say that that in this case he's allowed to be mitama to her. But not that it's a mitzvah to be mitama. I don't have a way to tell you that it's a mitzvah. I have a way to tell you that it's mutter. Again, coming off a Isser Pasuk, same idea as before. We had an Isser Pasuk, and then this seeming commandment of the Torah, which is a little bit ambiguous, we're going to say is not a commandment, but is only a rishus. Rabbi Kiva, what does Rabbi Kiva do? He also has this pasuk that says, "Lenefesh le'itama." So what do you do? Mechiim l'she'eroi nafkala. The pasuk says. The pasuk says, "Ki im l'she'erei hakarev elad le'imay le'aviv u'lebnai u'lebita le'achiv." It says specifically to all his relatives. So I also know that he's allowed to be mitama to his sister. Lo yitama lama li l'chayva. So now I have a chiyuv to be mitama. He has a chiyuv to be mitama to his sister, who's a basula. Again, single sister only. Rabbi Shmuel, not only single, she has to never have been married. So very, very specific case. Rabbi Shmuel, la mitma ve'ein mitma le'evareha. The extra word law is not coming to tell me. You need the word law to tell me that he can only be mitama to his sister in the full corpse, but not to one of her legs, which is also mitama. Another a mace is mitama with a certain amount. There's machlekes about it, but how much of a mace is mitama, or vias, a kazayas, a whole the shedra, the whole the right of the body, depending on the situation, but he can't be mitama to half a. Hold on. Right, she's mukesh and her body falls apart even when she's alive. He can't be mitama to her. So Eva Menachai, Matamaka Eva Menames, so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about that if a body part falls off of her while she's alive. And Eva Menachai is Matamaka Eva Menames, and he cannot be Matama, he cannot help bury this arm that falls off, or this finger that falls off, whatever this causes. So that Rabbi Shmuel's Matama is Mamayit with the word law that if one of her Eva fall off while she's alive. Rabbi Kiva, Imkein Lichte Rachmano, law, Lishlik Yitama. The lishlik yitama lamali shmamina that it's he learns out both things. The pasuk could have just said law, because we're already talking about tumah. You don't have to say the word tumah. We're already talking about tumah. We know it's extra. Rabbi Shmuel, I because of law, because of nami yitama. The Tanya Rabbi Shmuel, the same idea. The Tanya of Rabbi Shmuel, whole pasuk shnam v'nishis. The nishnis loy nishnis el b'shvil davish and nischadsha shenischadesh. So because we said the law. And that we need, because you have to tell her that not to have an extra, that her aver is not, he cannot be matama to her aver. So you say the word matama, it's not extra to darshan anything else. So again, at the end of the day, he is. So it sounds like Rabbi Shmuel learns out from Mechi Im L'She'eroi that he's allowed to be matama to her. And this pasuk law is coming to tell you that he can only be matama he can't be matama to an aver. Well, we don't have a pasuk for a chiyuv. And Rabbi Kiva learns that he's allowed to be mitama. It's rishus. Law is a chiyuv, and mitama is, or law is for that to be mayit evareha, and mitama is to tell me a chayva. Okay, the next machlekes they had was about freeing a Evet Kanani. My time with Rabbi Shmuel, I need the cost of loisachai kol neshama. It's a because I already said by the Zayin Umas. So Evet Kanani is loved after Evet Kanani. All Zayin Umas that lived in the Eretz Canaan were called Canaan. It's not Canaan Dafur Canaan. It's all those seven Umas. So because it says anyone is not allowed to be left alive, it's so now we see in certain scenarios you are allowed to work some of their offspring. I'm sorry. then she'ata v'shai l'kainse. So we have just going into this. The Gemara assumes, at least I guess this is how Mahalach used to do it. The man would travel to the woman's country, and then they would have a child there. And it's going to be medayik. It's going to be important why it's set up like this. But the man would go after the woman, marry her in her land, have a child there, and then maybe travel back or whatever it is. But the man would go to the woman. It's going to affect how we dash in a second. So the mystery again. So he said, we said in the passage, everybody in the 7 Zayin Umas has to die. I need a pasuk. Anybody, a male from the others Shivim Umais or 63 Umais that comes and lives with is Boyle Knanis, Ben, that he's allowed to. You're allowed to own this. You don't have to kill him. Why? Because by Yuchsin, by Goyim, it goes after the father. Not like by us, right? If a Jewish man is Boyle a Goya, the kid's not a Jew. If a guy is Boyle a Isha, is a right. So by us, it goes after the woman, but by a guy, it goes after the Zachar. The Tanya Minayin Echad Mina Umay Sheba Al Knan so Haylid Mimena Ben Shat V'Shoy the Knaisay. Then those you're allowed to own. So what is it about to say? They live by you. In other words, if that they live by you, those you're allowed to be those you're allowed to own. If they live by you, and it's much that the fathers came from overseas. That's the deal of the pasuk. I would think the other way around. Also, if a male Kanani, one of the 7 Umays, a man from one of the 7 Umays, was by a guy from one of the other nations and had a kid, I would think you also allowed to own that one, that Eved. That guy, you're also allowed to buy him as an Eved. Not the ones that live in your land. In other words, not the ones that are brought back to the land by the father, but the ones that are born there because the mother lived there, not the father lived there. I can learn it out from Mehem Tiknu because it says, what's the pasuk? No. Which pasuk is he learning out from? Mehem Tiknu. Oh, here. So he learns out only those that are gaining machem mehem, not the other way around. So that's how he learns it out from there. Right? Again, that pasuk is talking about female Canaanisim, female Canaanites. Those their kids you're allowed to own. This is a very not 2026 Gemara. I'm just owning people and it's not woke. Yeah. Right? So he learns out from mehem. Mehem tiknu. So the Oilam Mehem is now available to learn a chiyuv to keep them. Because how do I know that you don't have to kill them? Because it says Mehem Tiknu. He says Bahem that this extra. Notice he could also learn out Mehem. So he learns out from Bahem of the Oilam Bahem Tavaidu that not that you can learn not that you could work them forever. But that you could not own your brothers. In other words, you cannot have a Jew work for you forever. Because it says it in the end of the pasuk. So the pasuk is right. That's the pasuk of owning Evet Kananim that you should yashin them, you should lead them over, but you should be your kids, and you should work for you forever. And so Rabbi Shmuel learns out from Bahem Tavadu that you should not work your fellow Jew like that, and you cannot own a Jew in that way, right? It has halachic effects because a Yid, if you have an Eved Ivri, he doesn't eat. If a Kohen has an Eved Ivri, he doesn't eat truma because he's not yours. If a Kohen has an Eved Knan, he does eat truma because he's literally his property. So it's not only just a time issue. It's even in that time, there's a certain lack of kinyan that you have by another Jew, and also the way you work him. I think it's more of a kedushin sugya. But this is where these psukim are dashing over there. So Rabbi Kiva learns it from that. It says b'feish in the pasuk, you should not work your brothers like that. I don't need to learn that from Behem. So Rabbi Shmuel learns that from Behem. So what's with the extra? What's with the sefer? Rabbi Shmuel, because of b'chechem ksivnami b'hem. Once it says b'achechem, again, the same idea that you could repeat the pasuk because it's talking about a new scenario of don't working your brothers, and so working the goyim is not extra, even though I already said it before, because I already said I already said that you could own them. So why is it not extra in the pasuk over here talking about a Jew? Because it's brought down by an Eved Ivri. The Rishonim talk about what the Chiddush over here is, not so pashut, but these are the words of the Gemara. So we'll just go with that. The Tana, the Be'er Shmuel, called Pasha Shenema Venishnis Le'nishnis Ella B'Shvil Davish and Chadishba. So the same idea again. So you have three machlokes and three ideas. You have a pasuk that would seemingly answer this ma'isa, this idea. Then you have a pasuk of Rishus, and the Gemara and Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva figure out exactly how to get to Rishus and how do you get to all the different limudim of the other halachas pertaining to that halacha without getting into redundancies in psukim. But again, to answer Papa's question, there is no question that Rabbi Shmuel holds of mitzvah say throughout Shas, throughout the Torah. It's just in these three scenarios that we have an issue because of other psukim that seem to challenge that. So now we're talking about, again, we're coming off, the Gemara is discussing a woman who's having an affair, acting in an adulterous way. So we're going to discuss that in a little bit. Adultery in the house is like a carrier worm to sesame, which means it completely destroys it from inside. You don't even notice it until everything's a disaster. Anger in a house is like a carrier worm to shum. Same idea. It's over here. In both cases, talking about a woman. By a man, it's not the same level. Obviously, it's not a great idea. And they bring down the article brings down the psukim that specifically say that if a man does engage in this kind of behavior, he will lose it tremendously. It will bring him to poverty. And the Gemara is going to dash him later, but to this level that it destroys the home, the Gemara says it's referring to a woman because she's usually the one who takes care of the house, and if she's busy entertaining other people in the neighborhood, then she's going to neglect her duties at home, and the whole house is going to fall apart. That was the lashon that was pre the I think we're talking about Chet Midian. The kiva shachatu nistalka shchina mehem shenema v'lo yira b'cha ervas davar, the same pasuk. V'lo yira l'cha b'ervas davar v'shav me'acharecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not want to see this negative trait in us, so he removed himself from our camp. Amar Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Yonason. Kolesim mitzachas b'alam hazeh mekadmasi v'haylachas the fun of the Adam Abba. The Mashal says it's talking about this is what we know. When someone does a mitzvah, it makes a malach, and the malach is malavi you in Adam Habashem. V'halach lan tzedakah. V'cholav aver achas b'Adam hazeh milafafatay v'halachas lefnei yom hadin l'fan of lefnei yom hadin. It envelops him and it brings him to yom hadin. Shem yalaftay archas dacham. Dracham yala b'toyev v'yavaydu. It's the ways in which you act is going to envelop you and destroy you and lead you astray and destroy you. There's different reasons why he uses different lashon by the tzedakah, by the mitzvah, and by the chait. Right, the mitzvah it says that he's going to walk with him, he's going to walk ahead of him, and by the avera it says he's going to envelop him and take him. So there's a few different. The one that I saw the Masechta brought down was that by the mitzvah he goes willingly. The malach is taking him and the guy is following him willingly, so he leads him. But by the avera, the malach has to schlep him. So I had a different thought that a lot of times we do avera, we look at that as part of ourselves, and that's the lashon yilafte, that it becomes like archas, and it definitely says archas dracha, like the way you act, the normal way you act. He said, no, this is who I am. Once in a while, I do a nice thing. I do a mitzvah. So like that malach is going to go before me. That's something that's pasha. That's not really me. That's ahead of me. but the Averis we identify with much more, and it's a mistake. But I think that's how people view themselves sometimes. Rabbi Lazar Omer Kashur like a boy Kakelev Shenamar. This Averis tied to him, and I think it's specifically talking about a rayis. It's tied to him like a dog. Shenamar v'loy shama ilel v'loy shama. This is referring to the story of Yosef Atzadik and Ishes Potiphar. It says, "V'leishama elel lishkav etzla liyais ima." He didn't listen to her to lay with her and to be with her. Why is it? What's the redundancy in the Lashain is? Lishkav etzla ba'el mazel liyais ima l'olam haba. The pasuk is referring to liyais ima to be in olam haba, that she was going to be with him there also. So he didn't want that. Tan Hasam Shayibadin. Okay, so now we're going back to this idea of kina and stira and tuma and 1 aid, 2 aid. We're going to deal with that for a little bit after we just went on a nice tangent. So together, I'm sorry, Aedis Avishai is talking about stira because, and he's going all in Rabbi Yeshua. Right, that's the Pasha of the Gemara. Again, Tanan Hasam Shayi Badin Uma Edus Rishayna Madach Edus Rishayna by Stira. She ain't Asur Isra. It doesn't make it Asur forever. It just makes it Asur until she drinks. Ain't Miskayemes. It does not take effect. The Stira is not valid. The Pachas Mishayim, we need to aid them. Pachas Mishayim Edus. I'm sorry, Pachas Mishayim Edus Achrayna She Asur Isra. The Edus Achrayim Edus by Tuma. Einay din shaloi tiskayim and pachas mishnayim should not. Of course, it should be 2 because you're answering her forever. Tamad laima ein eidba. So we learn now. The Gemara answers that the kavachayim doesn't work. And if apisara makes sense, but we have a pasuk not like that. Be'ein einba kol sheyeshba. In other words, there's no 2 eidim, and there's be'ein einba. There's no 2 eidim, and as long as there's any aid, then it's she's us. It's a special pasuk, which we said that this is what we learned before. Now let's go the other way. Now let's go back. Now say the other way. Now that we established that Isser Tuma is valid with 1 Edus and it's Asr forever. So my answer is Tamalai Mikimatz Ve'eves Davar V'Halan Hu Aimer Apishaim Edim Ay Apishleisha Edim Yakum Davar Ma Davar Ha'amar La'Alan Apishnayim Edim Apkan Apishnayim Edim Apishnayim. So that's the Gemara answers. Now we know that that's not what the Gemara how the Gemara learned it before. The Gemara explained that the lashon of Ba was B'Medayik. So that's what the Gemara is going to ask over here. Right there. Hi Mikimatz Ve'eves Davar Nafka. Do we learn it out from Gzer Shava of Davar? Miba Nafka. Ba V'Loi B'Kina Ba V'Loi B'Stira. This is what we meant to say. Talmud Leimer ba v'loy b'kina ba v'loy b'stira. The tuma ba'ama v'loy kina v'loy stira v'loy mehem and erecha minal. And how do I know? We're saying it's a chasur mechzer in a way. We're saying this that we said davar is not talking about stira after kina, and it's not talking about tuma. What's it talking about? Talmud Leimer ba. The tuma ba'alma stam. If a man sees there's no stira, there's no kina. A man, 1 8 walks by and sees someone's wife hanging out with somebody in a secluded area. How do you know that 1 8 is not believed? So that in that case that we have a tuma without a stira, without a stira, or without a kina and a stira, that aid that has to be 2 aidim. We only rely on 1 aid when there's already reglaim level, like we explained in the previous Gemara. Taner Rabbanan ezewi aidus rishayna zu aidus stira, aidus achrayna zu aidus tuma. In fact, the Gemara v'kama shir stira. What is the shir of stira that we're dealing with the whole time? And the Gemara kadei tuma. Enough to be metama. What does that mean? Kadei bia. Enough for the act of the ma'isa bia. Kadei hara, which is the tchilas bia, which is enough. Rashi explains neshikis ever ba'isa makam. That's the exact lashon. Kadei. Neshikas Eva ba'isimakam. Literally, the man's Eva has to kiss that area. That's just a touch, and that's hara, and that's tchilas bia, and that's the shear that we're talking about. Hidei hakafas dekel, which is the amount of time to walk around the palm tree. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. So there's going to be a bunch of Shitas, and we're going to have to be miyashiv all of them. We're going to have to. There's two different rights, and we're going to figure out who says what. Hakafas dekel. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Lazar Aimer Kedei Mitzigas HaKais. In order to the time that it takes to pour kais, Rashi says kais stam kais is revius. That doesn't mean to pour kais; it means to dilute a kais. They didn't drink water. They used to dilute wine. Rabbi Shua Aimer Kedei L'Shtaisa, to drink a kais. Ben Azi Aimer Kedei L'Tzales Beitza, to cook an egg. Rabbi Kiva Amar Kedei Legaima, to swallow an egg. Rabbi Huda ben Vesei Amar Kedei Legaima Shalish Beitzes Zu Achazu, to swallow 3 eggs one after another. Rabbi Elazar ben Yirmiyah Amar Kedei Lekaisha Garde Nima, to tie for a weaver to tie his knot on his weaving machine. Chana ben Pinchas Amar Kedei Shetaishet Yada L'Seich Pia V'Lital Kisam, to take out a
seed?
No, like a splinter between her tooth. Plimai Amar Kadesh Shetayshid Yada L'Sal Lital Kikar, to go put her hand in her basket and take out a roll. Alpha Bisha in Raya Davar Zeichel Davar, even though he doesn't have a raya for this last one, he does a shtickle zeicher, because it says Kibat Isha Zaina ad Kika Lechem. It says Isha Zaina and Kika Lechem in the same pasuk, and it refers to and again, it's not saying this halacha in the pasuk, but it's like some sort of smach. Chol Hani Lam. The fact what's the Chol Hani Lam is not going on all the shirim. It's going on the first line. The Kamashir Stira Kedei Tuma Kedei Bia Kedei Hara Kedei Akafas Deka. Why do we need all 4 of those? That's what it's going on. Tzrichi the Itana Kedei Tuma Hava Mina Kedei Tuma the Artzasa. Maybe you have to be Matthias, so you don't just walk over to a woman and right away engage in relations. There's a little bit of a conversation, buy a cup of coffee, right? I don't have to wait all that time for the workup. It's just that time of the Maisabia. That is just that act. Kedei bia. It has to be just the Maisa. Vitana Kedei bia. If I would just say Kedei bia, have a minute Kedei Gmarbi. I would say it's a full Maisabia, not just hara, the whole thing. The whole Maisabiyah, Kamashalon, Kedei Hara, that's only Hara. Hashmin Kedei Hara, Havamina Kedei Hara, the Artasa. Any Kanami, it's just the Tchilas Biyah, but you also still need the pious, the shmuz before. Mm-hmm. So Kamashalon Kedei Tuma. So Kedei Tuma says just Tuma, not shmuzing with her, and then Kedei Biyah, Kedei Biyah, Kedei Hara is coming to again. Biyah after Tuma tells you that it's not the shmuz. And then bia by itself, you might need full bia. So you say hara. But hara could also just be, if it just says hara, it could be hara, but also the shmuz. So that's why it says tuma. So tuma, bia, hara, it says all 3. The kama kedei hara, kedei akafas dekal. Now, what is that shir lamaisa? That's talk around the palm tree. Now we have another brisa that's going to say a lot of these shitas, all these shitas, and say different zmanim. So we're going to have to be miyashim. The nistira the kamashir stira leishmanu, I don't know. Kashu aimer v'hinitmat havi aimer kedei tuma kedei bia kedei hara kedei chazaras dekel divi Rabbi Lazar. So Rabbi Lazar in the beginning, let's go back. Rabbi Lazar says kedei mezigas hakais kedei mezigas hakais. Okay, so let's go through the whole shita, and then we're going to line the Gemara is going to line them up. Kedei chazaras dekel divi Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Shua aimer kedei mezigas hakais. Ben Azi Amar Kedei L'Shtaisa, Rabbi Kiva Amar Kedei L'Tzales Beitza, Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseir Amar Kedei L'Gaima, to swallow it. Okay, so now the Gemara assumed because that Hainu Akaf is Dekel, Hainu Chazar is Dekel. So Hasam Amar Rabbi Shmuel Kedei Akaf is Dekel. Upli Rabbi Lazar Allah. So Rabbi Lazar says Mizikas Akais. Rabbi Shmuel says Kedei Akaf is Dekel, and then in the Brisa, Rabbi Lazar's one it says Kedei Chazar is Dekel. So it seems to be, it doesn't work. Again, the Gemara assumes in this question, the hanocha of the question is that Chazar Sedekel and Hakafas Dekel is the same share. The problem with that is that in the first brayso we said Rabbi Shmuel said Rabbi Shmuel said a kafas dekel, and Rabbi Elazar argues in him and says a different share.
Right.
So, and then in the Brisa he says chazaras dekel. Rabbi Elazar says chazaras dekel.
His share.
So Rabbi Elazar, that means it can't be chazaras dekel. So right. So what does it mean? What's chazaras dekel and kafas dekel? What does this mean?
Assuming his share that he said in both places.
Well, that's a given.
Right.
He's going to say the same halacha twice. He's not. I know kafas dekel. So Hainu. So we think now in the question. Hainu hakafas dekel. This hakafas dekel. Hainu hachazaras dekel is also chazaras dekel. Pasma Rabbi Shmuel kedei hakafas dekel. But please Rabbi Elazar. And so I'm going like this. Hacha amar Rabbi Elazar kedei chazaras dekel. Hacha please Rabbi Elazar. Hacha amar Rabbi Elazar chazaras dekel. Amar Abaya. How do you do this again? Amar Rabbi Shmuel kedei hakafas dekel. Please Rabbi Elazar. Over there, Rabbi Shmuel's one. It says Rabbi Shmuel says hakafas dekel, and Rabbi Elazar argues with him. And over here, Rabbi Elazar says chazaras dekel. And if we say chazaras dekel and hakafas dekel is the same thing, that doesn't make any sense. Why do you argue with him in the first brisa? Everything more like this. Amar Abaya hakafas beregel in the brisa, in the first brisa, Rabbi Shmuel is saying hakafas dekel is walking around the dekel. What's chazaras dekel beruach? It's the wind. In other words, the dekel goes from. It gets blown and returns to its position. Boy, so now we want to understand exactly what that means. Boy of Ashi chazu beruach kihechi the azov v'hader asi or dilma kihechi the azov v'asi v'hader kai beduchte teku. So the question is, I have a dekel standing in one place. I have an eastern wind come. I don't know which way we're facing. Whatever. Let's say right, the wind comes and blows it this way. So if you're going to say it just has to come back. Fine, that's one share. But let's say it goes. But the natural thing is that it goes the other way, and then for it to return and back in its original position. So does it have to return from its blowing, or does it have to return to its original position? Again, we're talking. This whole thing is like a little bit interesting of a shiurim. Thank God we don't have this by Matzah on Pesach. Imagine they gave a shiurim. It's like how long do you have? You have from when the baby stops crying until the mother comes into the room. Like
what's like the range here?
We're talking about a couple of minutes. We can look it up afterwards. We can look it up in. I don't have a Rambam here. We can look it up. I don't have a Shulchan Aruch either. But we can look it up online, and it's a few minutes. We're not talking. It's not a lot of time. But the guys fine. Now the Gemara says another question. And the Gemara, right? Well, that's another discrepancy. Rabbi Elazar over here says chazaras dekel, and the first brisa he says mizikas hakais. And the Gemara he's saying two different ways to get to the same measurement, but it's not an issue. Hasam am Rabbi Shua, in fact, the Gemara Hasam Rabbi Shua kedei l'shaisai. Over there he says it's to drink a cup of wine. Again, Ravias over here he says to dilute a kais. Everything he's combining. You have to combine these two shitas. He's combining what he says in the first brisa with the second brisa. You have to actually dilute it and drink it. Why don't you say the same thing we just said before? Say that it's one share. Say that it's the same share. Because if you're going to say that Rabbi Shua says Kadei l'shtaisai, Rabbi Elazar before him says Kadei Mezigas Hakais. So if you're going to say that the Mezigas Hakais in the second brisa and l'shtaisai in the first brisa is the same share, then Rabbi Elazar, then he's not arguing Rabbi Elazar. So why are you saying anything? Rabbi Elazar already just said it's Mezigas Hakais. So it must be he's arguing and he's adding, and it also fits the lashon because Rabbi Elazar says Meziga. Rabbi Elazar says also you have to drink that cup that you just had to mix. I'm telling you, you have to drink it also. You're going to see it later. The Gemara does a similar thing, but it doesn't speak it out like that. But I think it fits with the lashon. In the first brisa, when Aji says you have to cook an egg, right? Over here it says you have to drink a cup. And the Gemara, same thing, like we said, it's one share. Eating an egg and drinking a revius of wine is the same share. Rabbi Kiva in the first bride it says to swallow an egg. Over there it says to cook an egg. The second bride. So it means Rabbi Kiva says it means both. You have to cook an egg and eat it. But the again, the same idea. If he's going to say, Rabbi Kiva says Kedei L'Gaima, Rabbi Ben Azai says Kedei L'Tzalos, so then he's not arguing. So why are you saying anything? So then you can't say that L'Gaima and Tzalos is the same thing. You have to say that he's stacked. Awesome. I'm Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseir Kedei L'Gaima Shalish Beitzim. In the first brayso he says Kedei L'Gaima Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseir Kedei L'Gaima Shalish Beitzim. Right? Zuachazu. Hacha Amar Kedei L'Gaima. He says just to swallow one. Right? Again, where are we? Vitamini. Where's that? Where's L'Gaima? Just to swallow one egg. Right? So now you have a big problem. What are you going to say? That it can't be 1 and 3 is the same. It can't be that he's stacking and you need 4. Right? In the first brayso, he's just answering up Rabbi Kiva. He's saying the Gamma Meshayim Betzila V'Gam Emashir Gamya L'Chudav. He's saying that swallowing 3 eggs is the same shear as frying an egg or cooking an egg and eating it. So why are you giving me a complicated shear? Just say 3 eggs. But I don't hold to your shear. But I'm saying I'm simplifying your shear. You're telling he says 3 to answer Rabbi Kiva. He's not saying his own sheet in that brayso the way the Gemara his own sheet did just 1 egg. But you Rabbi Kiva that say you need to fry an egg or whatever, cook an egg and eat it. Just say that you have to eat 3 eggs and just talk about swallowing and not cooking and frying in two separate timers. But he only holds like out the second brayso of 1 egg. Okay. So we're gonna analyze the other ones. We're gonna ask specifics, and we're not gonna really have answers for them. That this weaver ties his string. Does he have to tie it on the part of the machine that's further away from him, or closer to him? It's different zman. The Gemara says, "Teiku." Chanan bar Pinchas Amar Kedei Shetesh Yad L'Liktal Kisam to take out the splinter from her teeth. Is it wedged in there very good, or it's like loosely chilling in her mouth? And the Gemara Teiku. I don't know. Again, I don't like. There seems to be a lot more than what the eye. Right? It seems to be a little bit interesting, this Gemara, but it seems to be like the Gemara is addressing this like very practical. Sure, like there's not a God that's a Gemara. Like it doesn't seem like a God, but it's like it seems too bizarre for it to be like Pashup Shah. She could put her hand in her basket to take out a roll. The one gets very technically. It's almost comical. Like you wouldn't think to ask these questions. Is the roll wedged into her basket or it's not wedged in? Is it a new basket or an old basket? Because the new baskets are smoother or less smooth than the less smooth. So you have to be more careful. Like a hot roll, it's very soft. You can't just like chop it out. You're gonna end up with half the roll. And then further, there's another question. Bidechati or bidesari? Is it what? Is it bidachti? I'm not trying to read this even. I think bidachti or bidesari. Bidechiti or bidesari. If it is it wheat or is it barley? Again, wheat is easier to take out, or smoother, or finer, or whatever. Berekika or beakusha? Is it a smooth loaf, or is it not such a smooth loaf? Okay, teiku. We don't know exactly what the shear is, so this is not the way to measure. Every one of these Tanam gave the share how long it takes them to do this Maisa. In fact, Ben Azai wasn't married, so how would he? Obviously, it's not referring to his own share. One way of answering this is that he was. I think the Mina Gemara they talk about is much that he was married at one point, so he did have experience with this, and then he was Pirish because he said, "What am I supposed to do? I can only learn. I only have love in my heart for Torah." Yibais Ema. Rabbi Shamilei, which is Gemara brings down is interesting because Rabbi Kiva was his Rebbe and he's arguing on his Rebbe, so it must be that he had another Rebbe at some point. Bibois Ema Sayyid Hashem Nereyev, that learning Torah, you get Siyat Shmai and you understand things even if you don't experience them personally. Again, it's still a question on Rabbi Yitzchak who says that they're all experiencing their own share. This wouldn't help him, but only really the first answer helps the kasha on Rabbi Yitzchak.
Besides him, that his was from
What?
saying his share was
Yeah, but again, so it's just Rabbi Yitzchak says they're all on their own personal experience, and except for Ben Azai, unless you explain it that he was married in Pirish. Davish Rav Avira Zimnin Amalei Mishmei the Rav Ami Zimnin Amalei Mishmei the Rav Asi. So Eichel Lechem B'Lei Netilas Yadayim Ki'ilu Ba Al Isha Zayna Shenemar Ki Ba'ad Isha Zayna Ad Kikar Lechem. We have this pasuk that explain why schlepping a bagel out of your roll, out of your basket is the zman that you should use to see Kedei Tumah, even though we don't really, it comes out of take, we don't really know what that shear is. But so we're going to dash in this pasuk. Ad Isha Zayna Ad Kikar Lechem. Amar Rava Hai Ba'ad Isha Zayna Ad Kikar Lechem. I'm sorry. He said if you're dashing like that, Ki Ba'ad Isha Zayna Ad Kikar Lechem. Amar Rava had ba'ad isha zayna ad kikar lechem ba'ad kikar lechem ad isha zayna mibayile. You know, it sounds like messing with the zayna causes a problem with the bread. You want to say the other way around. You want to say that being mezalzel in bread is like being with the isha zayna. So you should say that first. Ella Amar Rava kala abba al isha zayna. And this is what we said before, that if somebody is mezana, it does engage in a rayas. He comes to beg for money. Amar of Zrika, Amar of Elazar Kol HaMezalzel Ben Hisidayim Nekam and Island. Anybody who's Mezalzel Ben Hisidayim gets uprooted from the world. Amar of Chia Bar Ashi Amar Rav Mayim Shem Tzarch She Yagbia Yadav Lamala Mayim Achreim Tzarch She Yishafel Yadav Lamata. By Netisidayim, before the meal, you have to lift your hands up because you don't want the water to go back into your wrist where it's tamei, and then to go back and be matami your hands. But by Mayim Achrein, you want it to drip away from your fingers because it's not really to do with tumah, it's more to do with the sam, with the poisonous salt, and that should go away from your body. You shouldn't keep it on your hands. So even though this Bryce doesn't talk about Mayim Achreinim, but at least we have a Bryce that talks about the Mayim Yishayim. If you eat bread without drying your hands, that pasuk refers to bread that was baked in a very disgusting manner. They used human excrement to heat the bread, to turn on the oven, and it was disgusting. It wasn't tamei per se, the bread wasn't tamei, but you see something that's disgusting is called tamei. And eating wet bread is considered malas in the Gemara, so it's like considered eating tamei bread. Umay ve'eshes ish, umay, let's dash in this positive, the eshes ish, nefesh yikara tatzud, eshes ish entraps a yikara is valuable, like yakar is like expensive. Yakar, right? It's like a special. I forgot the word that I'm looking for. It traps us. What? What does this mean? The yakar, he's dashing lignai. That someone who thinks himself as yakar, then he's gonna end up being. He's going to end up being nechshel with Eshes Ish. And then of Eshes Ish, nefesh yikara tatzit. Amarava hay nefesh yikara nefesh gavaya mibayle. First of all, it should say nefesh gavaya. Don't say nefesh yikara. Yikara sounds like he's talking a good guy. So why is he busy with Eshes Ish? But Aid, he tatzit mibayle. You should say she gets entrapped. Because why? It's mashing that the one who's haughty, the one who's a Valgaiva, is going to run after her, not the other way around. So let's see, he's going to see. So Rava has another way of learning. He says, which refers to Mikayin Gadol, Shenichnas Lefnai V'Leflim, he Tzidena L'Dinim Shal Gehenim. He will. Wait, what's up over here? But just the last Josh of Rava is that he's learning Yakara as simple. He's saying that he's taki yakar, and yakar who mepninim is literally jewels, but it's referring to the kain gadol, because even a kain gadol ama aretz mamzer tamachachim goes before So you see that he's Taki Yakar, and still he's not saved from the entrapment of Gehenna. So it's referring to somebody who learns with Taki Yakar, and but if he's Ivan Neshesesh. Okay, thank you very much for coming. Tomorrow we will continue.
Thank